This is SciByte, episode 101 for September 10th, 2013. Hi, everyone, and welcome to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science podcast, fresh on Wednesday mornings over at jupiterbroadcasting.com and live Tuesday nights over at jblive.tv. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hey there, Chris.
Hey, Heather, happy science to you.
Happy science.
So what are we going to talk about this week?
Today, we're going to take a look at hibernation, suspended animation, Apollo 11 engines, Earth in pixels, summer updates, curiosity news, and as always, take a peek back into history and up in the sky this week.
Oh, I'm excited. It's good to be back from the 2013 summer break. And I know that
you had a break.
Yeah, while I was on break, you actually were still going on, weren't you? You were moving ahead.
Yes, we over at created a YouTube channel, and there were summer SciBytes.
Nice.
And huge thank you to Nikki. She was my awesome science co-host for the summer.
That is
I put
great.
Link in the show notes to the YouTube channel. They were a bit shorter episodes, but
Well, that happens.
we moved on, and there was summer science to have.
Well, very good. And so, yeah, big thank you to Nikki for helping out with that. And Heather, like she said, at the top of the show notes, we'll have a link to that YouTube channel. So if you missed out on some of the science and something you guys know stuff, some really interesting stuff is actually happening over the summer. And if you want to get the details up, for what happened, I bet that's where you'd find it, is right there in that there YouTube channel.
That's so.
All right, Heather. Well, with that out of the way, I say it's time we kick off the news. All right, where are we going to start tonight?
Hibernation and suspended animation.
For people?
Well, that's the question.
Okay.
Of course, these stories are kind of like, can we do it for people? Question mark.
Yeah, because I'm like...
eyebrow raised.
First thing, and this is maybe a sad indication, is economical vacation comes into mind. I go into a sleep staycation where I get all into my bed and I just hibernate for a good month, and then I wake up and I'm more refreshed than ever. Right, Heather?
And then you're good to go for a while without sleep again?
Yeah, I'm thinking so. All right, maybe not. Maybe that's bad science.
Yeah, well, there are the only primates, the fat-tailed dwarf lemurs, are the only primates that actually hibernate. Now, they go into this hibernation for 8 months without really sleeping, per se. It's not, quote-unquote, straight-up sleeping. Now, the breathing slows down to, one breath every 20 minutes. The heart rate goes from, a normal 200 beats a minute to, 4 beats per minute, not 40, just 4.
Wow.
So they survive about 3/4 of the year without deep sleep, which generally means without deep sleep, humans are not happy campers.
Right.
And in fact, there's a lack of, ability for your brain to function at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So the scientists wanted to go out there and, check out their brainwaves, except checking the brainwaves includes putting probes on the head, and lemurs in captivity don't hibernate. So they had to go to the wilds, which means going to Madagascar and trying to, pick up brainwaves off these little lemurs.
In the wild? Let me put these little sensors on your head. Now just run around. It's cool. Don't bother. Don't scratch them off.
They're not going to, they're not sleeping, but, pretty much not doing anything.
Yeah, okay.
Except they do their little hibernation 40 feet off the ground in the middle of the forest in Madagascar. So the researchers found that okay, when it's a certain temperature, they be in only REM sleep. So then they had to climb up. They did all this climbing, and they made little boxes that were just the lemurs would be really happy in. So then they hooked it up and tried to measure all of these.
They made them little hotel rooms.
Yeah, they made them hotel rooms so that they could stick electrodes to their little lemur heads and read that they were just doing REM sleep. It wasn't deep sleep. It was only REM. like, the dreaming type of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen that in back in '89, there was a sleep deprivation study that actually said, hey, they kept these poor 10 rats. They deprived them of non-REM sleep, and they got very, very sick. And after a month, they were dead rats.
Wow. Oh, wow. See, I struggle with sleep issues because I have sleep apnea. Diagnosed pretty severe sleep apnea, too.
Yeah, and anyone with, a kid under the age of X realizes there's a lack of sleep involved
Oh,
as
my
well.
gosh.
But now each person is different. There are some people who function much better with so many hours of sleep. I've known a guy who, one of the dozen people across the US that pretty much survive off like an hour of sleep.
Oh, that'd be horrible.
And that's it.
I could not do it, Heather.
And
I could not
don't
do it.
necessarily sleep every night. He just got to be like, I'm going to find a calm center. And he would do math equations all night.
When I was younger, I was able to, when I was in my early 20s, I would work a 24-hour shift, and then I would come home, and I would screw off and watch TV and play video games and, be fine. But these days, I find if I don't go to bed around 10:30, 11, I'm just completely exhausted. And I think the sleep apnea plays a role in that. And I notice, you mentioned like memory and things like that. I notice like I have almost no short-term memory when my sleep apnea is acting up. So if I it's one of those things where, say maybe I'm sitting in my office and I decide I need to get up and go to the kitchen. I will forget by the time I walk to the kitchen, which is about 20, 30 steps from my office. I will forget why I went to the kitchen by that time. And then like, oh, I guess my sleep apnea is acting up. And that's usually one of my first indicators, like, is this massively reduced mental capacity.
Wow.
It's horrible, Heather. It's horrible.
Yeah. So it's like sleep apnea machine just like puts a sticky note on your forehead, like, bing, today's not a thinking day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And no amount of coffee helps.
Yeah. But so then they took that and they're like, okay, well, let's see if we can. So it's not quite hibernation, but we're looking for suspended animation. So they did use these rats, put them in a chilly suspended animation after they had to inject them with a certain compound, because when your body temperature starts losing, if you're not a hibernating mammal, as your temperature starts to fall, then there are like fail-safes that kick into action. Blood vessels near your skin squeeze tight. They kind of try to hold the warmth in. The body starts to shiver. That's actually trying to stay warm in some way. So it's doing all these defenses to try to say, don't freeze. So they injected a compound that's very similar to, I'm going to say this wrong, adenosine. Anyway, it's a molecule in the body that actually signals sleepiness, which we were just talking about pretty much. So they cooled this room to about 15 degrees C. They grew really lethargic. They were moving all slow. The brain waves started slowing down. Their blood pressure dropped. And their heart rate went down, skipped beats. So the core temperature of the rats actually went down. So they weren't in a coma, nor were they asleep or hibernating. So, because hibernating, the metabolism drops much lower and the temperature drops much lower. Like the Arctic squirrel, it hibernates properly. So
You touched on this, but you said that it has to be just the right temperature, like 72 degrees outside. So it's like, is that because otherwise their bodies would get too cold and they would die?
It's certainly possible.
Huh.
I didn't read into that part specifically of the story as much, but yeah, it would make sense that, well, it's not going to get much cooler in Madagascar.
Yeah, that's true. That's nice,
but
actually.
Yeah, you would, if you're not moving and it's in that sort of a not really awake, not fully asleep state, then it would need to be a certain temperature so that your body could, be okay if your brain waves are just kind of chilling and not doing much.
Yeah, interesting. I'd like to have this. So hopefully they'll unlock it for humans.
Yes, I mean, that's, and for the rats, they put them in this suspended animation. And of course, then the most important part is, yes, they raised the temperature of the room and then they were okay. And about 12 hours later, they were kind of drinking and eating and all happy and alert.
Right. Their body must just tell them, okay, when it gets to this temperature, it's time to wake up.
Yeah, so that would be the key is can it come to humans at one point, and all the various reasons. And then one of the major reasons is for medical reasons. If you need to, can you put this on halt until you can get an organ transplant and until you can get more time to deal with some sort of illness or disease?
Or how many people like where they have some sort of injury where movement exasperates the problem, and if they would just stay still, it would heal a lot faster. So maybe you sleep for 2 weeks, and so your body can heal. I mean, there could be certain injuries where it's actually, good to induce a long-term sleep. And obviously, my mind jumps to space travel. I mean, that's immediately where I go to. But I do love the much more down-to-earth concepts of, you're about to have heart failure, you're about to have a collapsed lung or whatever it is. I don't know. Sleep until we get you a new part. I think that's pretty brilliant too.
Well, I mean, as it is now, they put, for heart transplants and various things, they put the body in a cold state, trying to slow the metabolism as much as they can. Of course, they can't get it as far as here, but so they're trying to take it steps further.
Very interesting. All right. Well, any other thoughts on that story?
Not yet.
All right. Well, keep us posted. Then let's take a quick little break right here because I've got some good news. So, a lot of you know that one of the ways that Jupiter Broadcasting pays the bills is by our affiliate system. And we have links at the bottom of the Jupiter Broadcasting site. Those have been there for a while now. If you click there for like Amazon or Newegg or Netflix or ThinkGeek or Best Buy, we'll get a little portion of that shopping session. Doesn't cost you anymore. Doesn't cost you a thing, actually. And it helps us out, and we really appreciate that. Now, we just updated the Chrome and Firefox extensions, just put out new updates, and they make, on the Firefox side, they improve compatibility with the newer versions of Firefox and performance. And on both sides, we've added Woot.com, love Woot.com, Monoprice is in there, which isn't linked in the bottom of our website. But the other thing we've done is we've also set them to be a little bit more intelligent about the way they handle affiliate tagging. So if you have another website you're at and they have an Amazon affiliate link to something and you want to buy something from their page and support them, our extension will now say, oh, you've clicked on an intentionally tagged link. Let me remove the JB tag for you and make sure I don't override. Now, to do that, that's a little bit of change of how we handle the URLs, which triggers the prompt for reactivation by Chrome, and I think maybe Firefox. Not sure about that last one. Anyways, in Chrome, for sure, by right now, the JB extension is off in your browser, unless you have gone back into the hamburger menu. That's the options menu, that little 3-line menu. You click that, and you re-enable that extension, turns it right back on, and now you have the new improved JB extension that's even a better netizen, and has improvements on the Firefox side if you're a Firefox user. And of course, on the Chrome side, it's pretty awesome too. And the code for those is up on GitHub if you'd like to check them out. And Heather and I always like to make a recommendation here on the SciByte Show because there's a few things we love in this world, and a lot of them have usually a sci-fi element to them.
Maybe.
This week's pick is no different. It is Star Trek Into Darkness, which is now out on Blu-ray. Have you seen it yet, Heather?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
I have been looking forward to with such anticipation.
So I won't spoil anything. So I'll just tell you this. I didn't realize it until I'd seen it actually my third time. And what I realized on the third viewing is the visuals, the special effects in this movie are so good that you're not even aware. I mean, there's obviously sometimes using special effects like big spaceships, right? But you don't know when you go from real to special effects. And it took me 3 viewings to even realize how incredible the special effects were. They're so incredible and so well done. You don't even think about them. I mean, it's truly, without question, the best looking Star Trek visually that I have ever seen. I mean, it is maybe the best movie I saw in 2013. I haven't seen a lot of movies recently, but it was quite good. So a hearty recommendation. And right now, $19.99 on Amazon for the Blu-ray, which includes a digital copy. There's a few different versions of this Blu-ray out there. The ones on Amazon have some pretty good special features, and that's not the case necessarily with the ones in the stores. It's one of the things they're doing with this Blu-ray that I'm not a big fan of is different retailers have different special features on the disc, and it's not very clear. Amazon's got one of the better deals, so if you use the link in our show notes, a portion of that shopping session will be contributed to the Jupiter Broadcasting Network and help us pay our bills, which are many and multi and lots and other words that make things sound like a lot of things. Yeah. Well, Heather, when you do see it, let me know. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that because I'm of a mixed mind on the movie, and there's definitely elements of it I like a lot, and there's elements that not so hot on.
Yeah.
All right, Heather. Well, with that file, that means it's time for the News Bite. Where does the news bite bring us this week?
It brings us to the Apollo 11 engines.
As it should. As it should.
Yes, talked about this a few times before on SciBytes, back on SciByte 40, back on 98. I actually mentioned it on Summer SciByte, where they were looking for, they'd decided to go look for Jeff Bezos, the Amazon.com founder and CEO, said, hey, I'm interested in going to look for the engines that could have come from the Apollos.
I love it. If Jupiter Broadcasting gets huge and I become like a crazy billionaire CEO, I'm doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So then he's like, all right, well, let's track the path of where the Apollo 11 engines would have been. So he tracks that path. Then he dives under the ocean, finds these engines, starts bringing them up. So then they say, okay, we have engines. They're from the Apollo 11 era. But it wasn't until they actually were cleaning these up that they found one piece of the engine that had a serial number stamped on it. And that serial number, they were actually able to go back into NASA's records and identify it as from Apollo 11.
Wow.
So now they had to use a black light and special lens filters. Now this is being restored at the Kansas Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas. I've seen when they had the Liberty Bell 7, and this is the people who actually restored that. And I remember I was there at the time, and it was behind a big sign. But if I may have stood on my toes and leaned way over the railing at a certain point and been able to catch some of it. But so they're, behind glass, and you could see them restoring, and it's been under the ocean for 40 years. It landed with a crunch on the ocean.
Yeah, I'm surprised, A, it wasn't destroyed during then, and B, an incredible find to actually find Apollo 11.
Yeah, so, that was was really what he was looking for, is following the track of that specific item. So now they're going through, it's going to take like 2 years to like complete the conservation project. And so if you happen to be there, then you can actually see behind the glass that as they restore it, they have sort of paneling that you can just kind of look behind. Now, NASA technically still owns it because they launched it. They own everything they have. Now, so they will decide where it will live. Now, this is the part where Chris looks out because Bezos is from Washington.
Yes,
and so he's like, can we have he wants some of the engine parts displayed at the Museum of Flight in Seattle.
Oh, that'd be great.
Now, most likely some of them will be up at the Smithsonian, would be my guess. But there's enough pieces and parts around that he may be able to get a little leeway on that. NASA will be like, okay,
well, he did do a lot of the heavy lifting here. To be fair, he
literal heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Literal heavy under the water.
It sounds like it was a job that was just too big for NASA to really budget. And they're like, well, we can't. I'm sure if NASA had a huge budget, they'd love to have done it and restore it themselves. But
yeah.
Wow, some of these pictures are incredible.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Definitely go to the show notes. If you're not watching the video, check out the pictures. There's links. And you can see how eroded some of these pieces are as they pulled them out of the ocean and how much work it will take to kind of go through all these and clean them up.
But, it's part of our human history. It's like a big part of our more recent human history. And so it is good to preserve these and pull them out while we can, because if they sit down there for too long, they might not be recoverable.
Yeah.
So I won't know until for a while if it's going to hit the Museum of Flight here in Seattle. Just going to take them a long time, won't it?
Yeah, it's going to be 2 years for just the restoration. So there'll probably be some long, hard thinking during that time. And then once it's restored, they'll probably say, okay, now what kind of situation are they all in? How do they all look? How many pieces have we been able to put together? So
I find it fascinating, and it's such a great idea that they are doing it's behind glass. You can go see it. That's just it's really geeky, but I'd love to do it.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was there. When I was there for the Liberty Bell 7, it just wasn't quite ready for that, and it's just literally like this big room. There's a railing, and then just huge windows where you can just kind of see into the area where they do all the reconstruction and everything like that, restoration. Yeah,
fascinating. The only thing I have like that in my neck of the woods is a Krispy Kreme up the highway that has glass behind the. Never mind, that's not important. All right, Heather, any other thoughts on that one?
Not yet, but I will keep everyone posted on everything that's going to happen with those.
All right, let me dust off the band. They've been on vacation for the summer, so I'm not sure. Let's see. Come on, guys. What do you got?
All right, ready? There we go.
On the SciByte program. All right, Heather. So I got the band in, and they pretty good job. We'll see how they do. The show's not over yet. Where are we at? 2Byte News. What's in the 2Byte News?
All right. Once again, I am reminded of the pale blue dot image where the entirety of human history and all those peoples, down to a few pixels, the Cassini spacecraft from Saturn was taking a picture, and it was looped around the backside of Saturn. So the sun, it was on the opposite side of the sun. So it was looking at the rings of Saturn. And they knew it was going to be able to, if they had it at a specific moment, that there actually was going to be Earth in the background.
Oh.
So they had this big little event, and they're like, all right, everyone, the picture's going to be taken at this time. So everybody look up and wave. They had this literal event where they were out in front of NASA. They're like, wave, everyone. So everyone waves.
Wow.
And so I had this, there is this picture of Earth from Saturn. It's just a couple of pixels big.
Kind of puts it in perspective, huh?
Yes, but it definitely reminded me of that. I talked about on another one of the Summer SciByte episodes. But yeah, you can see Earth, and then you can actually see the moon as well.
Adorable. They look like it looks like a big brother, little brother.
Yes.
And the little punk moon is just following around the big brother Earth.
Kind of is.
And we're on that little dot, which is kind of both equally depressing and inspiring.
Depressing?
Well, only because so much strife over the territory on that tiny little dot, that tiny little itty bitty dot. It kind of makes it all seem a little insignificant. More people need to be looking at these pictures because I think it would help people think about things a little bit. All right. Well, that's a good one, Heather. So, she has a link to that. In fact, links to everything we've talked about in the show notes so far, and including a link to the Summer SciByte August 1st edition, where they talked about that. Sounds like a good one. All right, Heather. Well, guess what? It has been a little bit since we've been on the air, so we've got some updates.
Yes, we talked about the Planetary Resources, their little Kickstarter telescope that they're getting up.
Oh, yeah.
They actually got up to the 1 million, I think 1.5 million going on. They had another hope, another step. They said, hey, if we get this far, then we'll start doing
stretch goals. They had stretch goals for that stuff.
They had stretch goals. They weren't able to get it as far as planetary, exoplanet searching. But they were able to get 1.5 million in 33 days.
Oh, okay.
So
that's, 1.5 million, that's enough to shoot something up into space, right?
Yep, their goal was just 1 million.
Okay.
They were able to do that in pretty quick. So they were kind of looking at it. It showed an average of $45,000 a day. An average donation of $85. People
are excited. $85 is nothing to sneeze at.
No, there were quite a few people who were taking the selfie. That's where they were.
Right, this is the one that has the screen built in. That
had the screen built in, and you can display your image, and it'll take that picture in orbit.
And now these guys, Planetary Resources, they're also local to me. They're in Bellevue, Washington, which is only a 35-minute drive from my house.
See?
I know. Washington's great.
You wouldn't, out of the space states, in the aerospace states, Washington is not one of the top ones that comes up in my mind.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah. Well, I guess maybe as, you know what it is, as tech becomes more involved with space and the space stuff gets a little more commoditized and more into the consumer levels, there are tech companies in Washington. We've got Microsoft and Amazon, and Nintendo's US division is here, and I could go on and on. We've got quite a bit, so maybe that's what's going on. All right, any other thoughts on that one?
Not that I could think of.
Oh, KickTrack. Yeah, KickTrack is the one you mentioned that shows where they raise $45K a day. Yeah, that's a great site. That's a good one for people who are interested in Kickstarter projects, kicktrack.com. All right, Heather, then do we have clearance to lift off to Mars?
I think we do.
And liftoff of the Atlas V with Curiosity.
Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Mars.
Oh, that ended a little sooner than I remembered. So, what's going on with that Curiosity rover up there? What's it been up to?
All right, it has been taking pictures of its moons
Oh, nice.
over the summer. Talked about it on one or two SciBytes. In one image, they were actually able to watch as one of the moons passed in front of the other. They were able to take a number of snapshot pictures.
Awesome.
And in another one, they actually see the larger of the two moons went in front of the sun. So it's not like our moon is like a perfect fit. Now, sometimes when our moon, it's various distances away from the Earth, and when it's really close, when it's close enough, you'll have this ring of fire, as they call it, where it's a little bit of the sun. It still shows around the moon. It's called an annular eclipse. It means not like fully. And so that's what this did, is it just kind of passed in front of the sun, and there's various snapshots that they took of it, and of course they can smash them together and make a little video of as the moon passes in front of the sun.
That's my favorite thing.
Yep, so it's not just photo ops that this is for. What it's helping is narrow down the orbital information of these moons.
Oh, okay.
So they're able to say, we have a rough idea of how they're moving and where they are and how their orbits are changing, but this really gives closer definitions of finding the exact.
Yeah. Oh, of course, right? Yeah, and especially when you can correlate it to something you observe up above, and you correlate it to what the rover is getting down below, and what we can observe from Earth, and you get 3 points of data, and Bob's your uncle, you got a pretty good picture of what's going on.
You do.
I like that. Is that the highlight since we've been gone?
It was most of it. I mean, we're still in the driving stage.
Yep.
They're still in the driving around to different places. There've been a couple of different things, but that was the two big highlights that I really liked.
I love the pictures from that. If you guys should check out the pictures Heather has in the show notes, they're really cool. I mean, it's just little things that remind you that that's another place you could live. It's like another real place, and they have a moon or moons, and there's eclipses. It's pretty cool. Speaking of things that are pretty cool, why don't you step into the time machine, Heather? Now, I charged it up this morning, but I got to warn you, I haven't traveled back in time since we've done the show last.
Oh, no.
So I don't know what's going to happen, but here we go, Heather. Here we go.
Okay.
I don't remember installing that disco ball. That is very odd, but you could probably tell by the... I know, but it was fun. You could probably tell by the vibrations. We almost hit the 200-year mark on this time travel. This one is 191 years ago. Takes us to September 17th, 1822. What happened this week in science, Heather?
The Rosetta Stone was deciphered. Now, Rosetta Stone, you see the little commercials and it's blah, blah, blah. But no, it was actually a chunk of tablet that had 3 different languages on it they saw. And so they were trying to figure out exactly what was going on. They found it. It was originally unearthed in 1799 by Napoleon's army. And so then it kind of went through the works, and they saw hieroglyphics on it. So able to decipher those starting in 1808. And so then did some fragmentary work, and they're actually able to finally get it. Now it's not like a straight block. It had some pieces and chunks missing. So they would say, all right, we know how to translate this. So it's like, all right, these are the words, and there's these other things, other languages that we can't translate yet, but we know all the words. So then they started going through and started trying to translate everything back and say, all right, this is what we think this says, this is what we think this says, and they were finally able to complete the translation 190 years ago this week.
Wow. And isn't that interesting how some of these things just stay in our parlance, like Rosetta Stone, we're familiar with the commercials now, and there's also been a lot of software on called Rosetta Stone. Apple had used the term Rosetta for a compatibility layer to translate old types of applications to new types of instruction sets. So this terminal, this Rosetta Stone, I had no idea it was 191 years ago that we finally cracked it, based on just how frequently it's used today. It's very common.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Heather, well, I'll recalibrate the SciByte 2000 so that way we can look up into the sky this week.
Alrighty, on Friday, September the 13th, about an hour before sunset, look to the west to southwest, and you'll see Saturn 6 degrees to the upper left of Venus. Now, 5 degrees is roughly 3 fingers, that's your ring finger to your pointer finger, held at arm's length. So if you hold that up at arm's length, you'll able to see Saturn and Venus just the other side of each other. And of course, Venus is going to be the brighter of the two, but Saturn is the higher to the left, like it has its rings, like it's flying higher. In general, we've got Venus and Saturn in the evening twilight, low in the west to southwest. And they're getting closer and closer as the week goes by until Friday when they're the 6 degrees apart. Mars and Venus are hanging out before and during dawn. Poor Mars and Jupiter. So the two of us
Jupiter's
are
the
hanging
brighter
out.
one, even though Mars is closer, huh?
Yes.
Okay. It's just so big.
Yeah. But yeah,
It is
poor
big
Mars and Jupiter we're dealing with before dawn over
Okay.
in the east. So they're getting slowly farther apart from each other. But Jupiter the brighter, Mars to the lower left.
Aw, Jupiter and Mars hanging out together for a little while.
Yep.
So while we were on summer break, they were hanging out.
They're hanging out before dawn.
And now that we're back doing the show, they're going their separate ways.
Yep.
Before dawn. All right, well, Heather has all of that line outlined in the show notes. So if you see something up in the sky and you're like, what is that? Oh, let me go check the show notes. Just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and then look for SciByte 101. And specifically, the looking up in the sky sections towards the bottom of the show notes. So you just jump down there and she has it all laid out for you. Heather, anything else we want to cover before we get out of here?
I don't think so.
All right, very good. Well, good to be back, Heather. And now we're moving on to another 100 episodes. So don't forget, we need your feedback. You can email us, SciByte at jupiterbroadcasting.com, or pop that contact link. And of course, we'd love to have you join us live on Tuesdays over at jblive.tv at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, which is, that's 2:30 in the morning UTC, but you do the math. I don't know, so that's not too bad. All right, Heather, well, thanks for the great show and have a great week.
Thank you. You too.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of SciByte. We'll see you right back here next week.